Hello and welcome to Liberty Nation TV with your host, Jeff Charles. It's the economy, stupid! That phrase is no less relevant today than it was back when it was coined by James Carville in 1992. Unfortunately, the COVID-19 pandemic, coupled with the Biden administration's ineptitude, has plunged the country into another dire economic situation. With me to discuss this matter is Liberty Nation's economic correspondent and resident vegan, Andrew Moran. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. So let's dive right on in. In one of your articles on libertynation.com, you point out that the post-pandemic economy doesn't quite resemble the pre-pandemic economy. But shouldn't this be different, that the nation has opened back up mostly? So shouldn't we be seeing a return to normal?
Well, first on a societal front, you still have many of the same public health restrictions as you did during the pandemic. You still have the mask mandates in many places. You have the social distancing guidelines. You have capacity limits in restaurants and theaters. So it's pretty much the same for a lot of people, a lot of states. And on the economic front, I mean, you still have many issues occurring from the pandemic. For example, jobs are growing, it's true, but you still have 6 million fewer jobs than you did before the pandemic. You also have I think the latest number I saw was 2 million underemployed people. So these are folks who, have good skills and have good experience in education, but the job they're doing doesn't match all the human capital that they've developed in their lifetime. And then, of course, all the other factors you have at place here. You have job openings at all-time highs, inflation is skyrocketing, shortages are prevalent. There's just so many factors that make this new normal post-pandemic recovery not exactly flattering for this administration that promised to turn the page and provide all this growth and hope and change as like the Obama days.
Yeah, really. We got a lot of change, but not a whole lot of hope right now.
What's interesting too is that if you compare, because if you look at Obama's economic recovery record, his was abysmal. He had the worst economic recovery record, I think, of a top three. So I've explained a lot on LNTV and LN Radio and Uprising podcast that I think Biden's got pretty much the same record as Obama. It's going to be anemic growth. The economy is going to expand, but not at a pace as you've seen in previous years.
So here's my question about that, especially when it concerns jobless numbers. In September, the enhanced federal unemployment benefits went away, basically. And in many states, they had already gotten rid of it. And that did help with the jobless numbers a little bit. But given the fact that now none of them exist and nobody's, at least not by the federal government, nobody's being paid to stay home from work, why isn't the jobless issue being resolved or heading in the right direction? I mean, the most recent jobs report was abysmal.
Yeah, well, if you look at the September jobs report, I think the one positive from that report was that it was pretty diverse. You had a lot of job growth in key sectors that contribute to economic growth. Manufacturing was up, construction was up, financial services were up, government was down, which was a fantastic thing. But in previous jobs report, you see a lot of the job growth concentrated in sustenance sectors. For example, leisure and hospitality. Yes, being a waiter is very hard. It's a difficult job, but it doesn't provide to a long-term economic growth to the economy. And I think that's what a lot of people are missing in these jobs reports. Yeah, I mean, on the surface, employment is on the rise, but when you start diving beneath those BLS reports, you see a pretty concerning trend occurring in the Biden economy.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's talk about the issue with the supply chain. Can you kind of break this whole thing down for people like myself who don't have like a really in-depth understanding of these matters? Like what's going on here? Why are shelves empty?
Yeah, so the number one thing is that everyone is demanding everything at the same time, and I feel like I'm a broken record because I've been saying this nonstop in all these other different medias. But yeah, that's the main thing. Everyone wants everything at the same time: coffee, copper, oil, natural gas. That's the primary thing. And you have the issue now is that a lot of the output is not matching the demand. And a lot of the shipments that you have, the shipments are so immense that you don't have the capacity to do it. That's why you have a shipping container crisis. There are not enough shipping containers dollars to match the exports going out. So so a lot of these companies are paying massive premiums just to have their goods on a 40 foot container. The last number I saw, which was near an all-time high, was $11,000 to have your goods on the freight and on the cargo, which is forcing companies like Walmart and Costco to start chartering their own ships. So they're paying about $20,000 per container, which is a concerning trend because obviously they're going to pass these, dramatic increase in shipping costs to the consumer. So, it's a very multifaceted factor. I usually put it this way. So it's, right now, Brazil, they just came off their worst drought in 90 years, which impacted their soybean harvest. Now, back during pre-COVID, if that would have happened, soybean prices would have gone up. It would have gone up, let's say, 0.5%. Now, when that's reported, soybean prices, go up 1 or 2%. Same with copper. Copper, if Chile is having a worker stoppage issues going on because of unions are protesting, copper is going to go up 1 or 2%. But if this was, back, let's say, November of 2017, copper would have gone up just a few basis points.
So here's what I don't understand. Like I've heard you say it before. I mean, a lot of people want a lot of different things all at the same time. Why is that the case now when it wasn't so much, pre-pandemic?
Well, because the global economy is opening up. The coffee shops are back up, the restaurants are back up. All these companies, they need energy to keep the lights on. So it's just everything was open before the pandemic, so supplies were able to match the demand. But now everything's back up, so everyone wants everything simultaneously, and the amount of supplies that were in the marketplace are just not enough right now to match that demand. You also had the issue too with the lockdown. So when you had the lockdowns, there wasn't as much production going on because you still had all the public health restrictions. So, for example, in South Africa, a lot of the mines stopped producing. So they stopped producing palladium. Now, palladium is a huge metal for the automobile sector to keep a lot of their emissions down. So you had, there was a surplus going on, somewhat of a surplus going on in the palladium. So that's just another example of how the COVID pandemic affected output levels and supplies.
So basically, what I'm hearing is that we were on lockdown for so long. And now that things are open up, we're like, yeah, now we can buy stuff now. Is that basically what's going on here?
Yeah, you can think of like Black Friday. Everyone just, beating each other up to get that flat screen television at the same time and going through those stores and stealing presents from little children.
Yeah. So it's the consumer's fault. We're the ones out there causing this. But
yes, it's all their fault.
Yeah. I mean, is this just something that has to clear up naturally, or are there things that the administration should be doing, or?
Yeah, I've been asked that question a lot, and there's nothing I can really think the government can do. Perhaps they could suspend the Jones Act, which I haven't researched intensely on it, but I think there's been some discussion among the administration to suspend that. Now, the Jones Act is a very important policy. It was enacted, I think, nearly a century ago, and it was pretty much to support American workers. You weren't allowed to have foreign ships transfer goods to U.S. ports. You had to have U.S. flagged ships go transfer to U.S. ports and have all these different American workers. So now I think the administration's realizing this huge backlog you have in, let's say, in the Los Angeles or the other port in California, Huntington Beach. One of those beaches in Western California, and they're trying to clear that backlog because a lot of estimates show that the backlog is going to happen until at least early to mid 2022.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So we might be in this for a while, but that kind of leads us to another economic problem that we're dealing with right now, which is inflation. Can you explain how this current situation which is being called Bidenflation, how did this come about? What's going on?
I coined that. I will say I coined.
Okay. You heard it here, folks.
But so with inflation, I think it's twofold. So on the one hand, you had all this massive money printing occurring by the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve created 1/4 of all U.S. dollars ever created in U.S. history in a 1-year time span, and you still have the $120 billion a month being printed by the Federal Reserve System. Although there has been talk that they'll start tapering and trimming these bond buying programs to slow down the monetary expansion. On the other hand, you also have, as we just discussed, the the shipping container crisis going on and all the shortage occurring. So the prices are just adjusting to that. They're adjusting to the supply and demand, and they're incentivizing more producers to raise output so the farmers can take advantage of these higher prices. So, for example, cotton. I just wrote an article about how cotton prices are trading at all-time highs. Now, farmers they're benefiting dramatically from these all-time high cotton prices. So a lot of the industry observers are forecasting that cotton, whether it's in China or whether it's in the United States, they're going to ramp up output in order to satisfy that demand going on. So that's more of so you have the Federal Reserve monetary expansion, and you have a supply and demand concern for inflation.
Now, when you talk about the Federal Reserve monetary expansion, can you explain what that means?
Pretty much, Jerome Powell money printer go brrr. It's just, they print all this money. They have all this freshly created money travel through the economy. The first people benefit are those who are connected, who can tap that well. So it's pretty much Wall Street and the federal government. And as that money, freshly created money, seeps through the rest of the economy, you, me, the middle class, low income, they get the crumbs of that highly inflated or the currency dilution of the U.S. dollar. So you need more dollars to buy these goods if you can get your hands on those goods. So that's how the Federal Reserve is contributing to the inflation problem. Now, what the Federal Reserve, they've been saying for so long, same with the Biden White House, is that inflation is not happening. Inflation was not going to occur.
Right.
And if you believe that, you were this Austrian crackpot. How dare you think that? But now they've just completely evolved the situation by saying, oh yeah, well, inflation is red hot and it's going to be here, but you know what? It's still transitory, even if inflation is going to be here until or sometime next year. So they've been wrong on the whole inflation front from day one. Both the Biden administration and the Powell's FOMC.
Yeah. So, the similar question about the supply chain. When is this going? Is this going to be the new normal? Am I still going to be having to pay more money for ammo when I want to go to the range? Is that ever going to go down, or is this inflation here to stay?
Well, you'll need James Fight information for that, for the ammo, but for everything else, a lot of Wall Street surveys have suggested that this could be here until sometime next year. But they've gotten it wrong so many times before, so it wouldn't be surprising if this was the new normal until 2023 when everything starts catching up. But then you saw the issue too, where more economies go to full capacity again in the post-COVID world. So yeah, it's not going to ease up anytime soon. You're still going to pay more for ammo. You're still going to have issues with getting your groceries at the supermarket. But if you're a vegan like me, you still have all your vegan proteins. You haven't had an issue with that yet.
yeah, no demand. Well, we'll go ahead and leave it on that bright and cheery thought. We'll be keeping an eye on this. But thanks for joining me, Mr. Moran.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And remember, this show is proudly sponsored by LibertyNation.com, where you can access podcasts, breaking news and analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. Just go to LibertyNation.com on your browser, or hit Rumble, YouTube, or check out our Liberty Nation News Roku channel. I'm Jeff Charles. Thanks for watching. This program is a production of LibertyNation.com, conservative news where truth matters.
Who are we? We are Americans that believe in liberty. We are a project of the nonprofit One Generation Away. We are patriots who apply the founding principles to the issues of today.
And they keep moving the goalposts on us.
We are educators and commentators who love America and the Constitution. Who are we? We are Liberty Nation.